Hello, it's your friend DoubleBite, and I'm super excited for this video. So, my friend Runner was like, hey, your next game design video should be a card game. And I'm like, well, that sounds great. And then I had the idea of doing two card game videos, one from a top-down design and one from a bottom-up design. What do those mean? We'll get to that in a second. And I got really all into it. I made this entire presentation thing on Wednesday, and it's 90 slides. So I may need to break this up into two videos. We'll see how far we get at like the 45-minute mark. So yeah, it's gonna be another one of my longer form rambly ones, but I hope you like it. It's been really a nice tool for me to make these like slideshows as a form of writing rather than writing a script or whatever. Since it lets me sync audio with visual in a way that's less tedious than actual video editing. With that in mind, let's continue with the game. So, what is top-down design in gaming? Roughly speaking, top-down design is when you start with a theme and then design the mechanics from that. Now, top-down, bottom-up design has a couple of different uses. For example, in engineering, it usually refers to going from final product to details or from details to final product as far as kind of design philosophy. But in gaming, I know of the term through the amazing Mark Rosewater. So, Marrow, as he is known, is the lead designer of Magic the Gathering, and he's been making cards for about like 20 years now. Something ridiculous. Like, this article is from 2003, back when Scourge first came out. And I never realized how much Marrow's writing affected me and affected my philosophy on game design until I started thinking about game design as far as cards goes and being like, whoa, this changed my life. So, I highly recommend reading all of Rosewater's Making Magic articles. He has podcasts. Just very charming, very nice person. But anyway, so here's the basics of top-down design. You can think of it on a Magic card as the top of the card is the picture, is the name, is the flavor of a card. So in this article, he talks about designing this card Frozen Solid, where they wanted to do a blue spell that disables a creature. Blue doesn't normally do damage, so they needed to think of another way that blue could destroy a creature without doing direct damage. So they came up thematically Frozen Solid. This is something that blue could do. Blue has water, blue has ice. This is something they could do. So what does it mean to be frozen solid? Well, they can't do their abilities, and they're fragile. So from the idea of being frozen solid, we then get the actual ability of the card. So that's top-down design, on a very literal, visual way. So, what's our theme? What's going to be the theme of this game that's going to drive our design of the game? Here's what I was thinking. Space. The final frontier. Okay. So I do hate sci-fi usually, but that's not a reason to not try to make a cool sci-fi game. If I have never found a sci-fi game that really hooked me, that should be extra motivation to make a game that I'd want to play. So another Marrow lesson, also with the idea of top-down design, is the triad of comfort, surprise, and completion. Comfort being, if you're working within a certain theme, people are going to expect things from that theme, and you do want to give them to them. D&D wouldn't be D&D without Dungeons and Dragons of some kind. Surprise is where you put the spin on it. The dragon is friendly. You're breaking into the dungeon is the dragon's house, and you're being a home invader, and you're an asshole. That kind of thing. Taking some of the things that we find comfortable and subverting them. And I know I've had this experience where if too many things are subverted, it just feels like trying too hard. So you have to have a balance of comfort and surprise. Last but not least is completion, is the idea that the game's mechanics have to reflect this comfort and surprise and come full circle. It can't coast on just theme, but the game has to be a complete entity. So let's go through these steps. Comfort. So what's comfortable about sci-fi? What do we expect from a sci-fi themed game? And what's comfortably mechanical as well? What game mechanics do we usually see in science fiction space-themed games. So thematically, we expect interstellar travel. There's planets, they might be dangerous, you might be able to trade with the natives. I'm just trying to kind of pick 3 things from each category, just to give ourselves, let us brainstorm a little bit. What else is thematic? Aliens. They could be more advanced than us, less advanced than us, and there could be the precursors, those aliens who happen to mysteriously die out and leave all sorts of dangerous shit lying around. Classic. These are, remember, we're just gathering our tropes now. And advanced technology. You know, in the future there's holograms, you can augment yourselves, you can go into the computer and be in the Matrix, and cyberpunk and neuromancer and yada yada yada. Mechanically, from a game set in space, you expect to be able to explore planets, get supplies, maybe send people to the planet, and there's often an element of area control. What planets can you take over? Where are your bases of operations? Something like Twilight Imperium, where the map is one big star system, or other games that I don't play because I don't like sci-fi, or Twilight Imperium that much. Mechanically, we have our aliens. Aliens usually mean that there's different play styles. There could be canonically enemy factions with each other, where you have to side with one side or the other. They have alien artifacts that do things that human tools could never do, that can be acquired in-game. And then we have, again, advanced technology. What does that mean mechanically? Different factions have different technology. There's tech trees. Hacking is often a part of sci-fi games as something that the players can do. So right now we've just very quickly figured out some common thematic and mechanical tropes of sci-fi. So now, what can we do with these? Let's do a quick tangent. Microscope rules. It is a world-building tabletop game. And check it out, it's amazing, but I'm not going to go into super detail now, but one of the first things you do in the game is you pick an overarching thing. So when I played with some friends, ours was the rise and fall of the Dwarven Empire. And the first thing you do is you make a list of things you want and things you don't want, things you want to veto. So we said there are elves in this world, but there are no humans. But there are relics of human civilizations in the past. And from there, we're getting our creative juices flowing. We're like, okay, there's no humans in our story, but there were humans in the past. Why is that the case? We definitely have elves. What is our relationship with the elves? So from these requirements and from this forbidden list, we then can get a sense of our world and start growing that. So with that in mind, here's the things I want from my game. I want to be able to explore planets, but I don't really want there to be hostile planets. I don't really want there to be trade between players as a huge focus of the game. I want it to be more exploration focused. I'm very cool with aliens of all, shapes and sizes, but I'm not super about the kind of cyberpunk hacker future. I'm more interested in spaceships, aliens, that kind of thing. So on that mechanical side, yeah, we're going to explore planets, going to place workers, control areas. The aliens will be different, but they're not going to be hostile. We're going to be chill with the aliens. It's going to be kind of a boosting everyone up kind of game, not smashing other people down kind of game. And as far as advanced technology goes, I don't really want the technology on the human side to be factional. Not really. I want the humans to kind of be on the same playing field, and it's through their interactions with the aliens that their strategies might start to change. So we'll get tech trees, but they'll be from the alien side, not ours. So this is kind of very theoretically Star Trek. The humans are going out and finding different aliens, saying, ooh, these aliens are different because they're blue. These aliens had 3 heads, etc. So that's where we're at. So now that we've got this kind of comfort zone, things that are very familiar. Oh, I really need to see what's ahead on this, actually, because it's very small, my previews. Anyway, so results and implications of our comfort picks. We have exploring planets, getting supplies, worker placement, area control. That means that even though we're doing a card game, there has to be some kind of board permanence. There have to be planets that we can land on. with no trade, no hostile planets, no hacking, player turns tend to be more solitary. There's not as much direct conflict with each other or with the board. It's more independent. Since we have various aliens, but with different playstyles, but not enemy factions, that means the aliens are innately neutral factions, and they're more abstract rather than like player versus environment kind of enemies. Last but not least, we have augments, tech trees, artifacts, but the players start out symmetrical. So that's making me think we have augments that players can play to make their decks more unique. What if we had individual heroes that the players could have that they could then grow over time and make stronger? Again, we're just spitballing here. We're just spitballing. And this is the exact process I made when doing these slides. I did not plan slides ahead unless I thought of an idea that I was going to use later, but this is my stream of consciousness how I started designing, trying to do a top-down design. Next up are some surprises. Did I mess this slide up? Okay. Next are some surprises. So we have exploring planets as part of our comfort picks. What if you could only explore them via a wormhole? And once you visit them and get back, the wormhole closes, or there's a limit of turns that they're on the board. So you have to like jump on a planet that's stable and you can stay there for a while. Or if there's a wormhole that you know is about to close, you can try to get in and get out. And that'll add some tension to the game. Rather than be like, oh, here's a planet, I can go visit it. So because we don't have direct combat or trade, we need something to cause conflict between the players. So what if we had some random events that you could draw that would affect your turn and your decisions? Now let's take that a step further, because random events, they're not that interesting. What if you have scientists who are like augurs, who can like predict the future and see patterns in the world, like super brains? So the mechanically, the players will put their own random events into the events deck. So I might put in meteor shower, and I know that there could be a meteor shower coming up. And then an opponent might put their events in it, and they might be, EMP, everyone's ships break. So we have a sense of what could come up, but we don't know what the other person's put in there, and that'll add a little tension. So, aliens are neutral factions, but have different play styles. What could that mean mechanically? What if they each used a different resource to get their technology? If they want to learn from humans, you need to show them an upgrade. You need to have upgraded something. They want to explore the galaxy with you, you have to take an alien with you when you get off the planet. Exploring the idea of trading with aliens, not with money, but with other things, because these aliens are different. And last, the idea of your characters getting augments, we can extrapolate on that and say, what if you can't control them? What if there's that random tension where you have that level of risk? So we're building on these things that we've decided that we wanted, but making them more interesting, more unique. So, kind of brief overview, we're doing a space game where you explore planets via wormholes that can close with warning or without warning, and you'll interact with aliens that will give you technology in exchange for various things, and there can be random events that can affect the players or can affect the players' characters that are uncontrollable. So now that we got our general theme going, let's look at some mechanical questions. Big question for me is, whenever I think of a card game, deck builder or pre-built, or somewhere in between. What's my next slide? Wait just one second. So, I'm going to kind of go over what these terms are in my head so we're all on the same page. What's the difference here? A deck builder, you start with a small deck over time and it gets reshuffled repeatedly. Pre-built, you have a larger deck that does not typically grow, with a penalty for running out of cards. So deck builders are like Dominion, where you start out with these 10 cards that get you more cards, and every time you run out of cards you reshuffle. Pre-builts are like Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering. You have a deck of a fixed size. When you run out of cards, bad things happen. Hearthstone breaks the does not grow rule a little bit, but Hearthstone breaks everything, so fuck it. What else is important? Deck builders have identical starting hands. Pre-builts, the whole point is that your deck is different from your opponent's, unless you're doing like a mirror match or something. Additionally, because pre-builts are bigger, your starting hand is going to be different from your opponent's starting hand, even if your decks are the same. So there's less inherent symmetry in the start of a pre-built card game. In deck builders, resources are on a per-turn basis. Cards usually don't stay in play. You spend gold, buy card goes in your discard, your turn's over. Whereas in pre-built games, you often have cards that stay in play, and your board is developed over time. Again, these aren't hard and fast rules, but they're pretty reliable, all things considered. Next, deck builders have cards that are obtained from a public pool. This causes conflict from strategic resources, because you could get a card that your opponent wanted, and it also makes the fact that your deck contents are known to your opponent at all times, because they've seen what you've drafted. In pre-built decks, cards in play and health totals result in conflict over the game's state. So there's not necessarily a strategic resource that you're fighting over, but the strategic resources that you've deployed are where the conflict comes in. In addition, you don't know what the other deck might contain. You may have a good sense of it, especially if it's a popular deck in the metagame, but in general, you don't know what could be coming at you. Last but not least, in deck builders, you usually count up to victory. You get a certain number of victory points to win the game, or you get victory points until some end condition. In pre-built games, victory usually counts down. You have to bring your opponent to 0 first. There are some exceptions. Star Realms is a popular deck builder that's a space combat game where you're trying to bring your opponent's health to 0, but I feel like these two are pretty common scenarios. So, which is it going to be? Well, if you know me in real life, I love deck builders. I really do. I like pre-built games, but they tend to be a bigger financial investment and bigger time investment. You have to understand the meta better. The deck builder, as long as you and the other person know the game pretty well, you can sit down and have a nice game. Well, but there are a lot of deck builders out there. A lot of deck builders out there. They can be a little samey. So we're not going to do a normal deck builder. We're going to do something that I'm going to call an upgrader, aka something in between a pre-built and a deck builder. What is an upgrader? I'm making it up as we go along. So we're going to have a medium-sized pre-built deck. So you come into the game with your own deck that you've created, but it's going to get shuffled repeatedly. There's not going to be a penalty for running out of cards. Let's have it be so that you play cards that stay in play, and then they're used, and then they get shuffled back in. So you're building up an onboard presence, and your opponent can see, oh, they're planning something, but not necessarily know what you're planning. We're going to obtain cards from a public pool of some kind still, but rather than just adding them to our deck, we're going to replace or upgrade cards that we've already played. So our deck's going to stay about the same size, just get better as the game goes on. Information, let's make it somewhat hidden. You know, in a deck builder, you have a lot of information about your opponent's deck. In a pre-built, you have a little information. It'd be cool to have a game where your opponent can kind of figure out what you're doing, but not quite. And again, we're just smooshing the two together. Victory can go up and down. You can gain victory points, you can lose victory points. This way, we'll have a little bit more direct conflict. So we're adding in mechanical conflict, even though we don't have that much thematic conflict. They have to have conflict. I'm going to make a whole video about that eventually. Alright, so what's next? Well, damn, I just called myself out good. Yeah, no, there's a lot going on right now, and we have no visual aids besides these slides, and it's all in my head, and I'm just making up terms, and we're talking about mechanics now, and this is all a big mush. So, we gotta tie this all together. Time for some of the third thing, because remember those three things earlier? Completion. So, space. Exploring planets. Augmenting our people. Trading with aliens. We start out with a deck. We're going to upgrade our deck over time. We're going to play stuff that will stay in play for a little bit, then go back into our deck. And our deck will get better over time. So let's try to tie this together. So what's our core gameplay loop going to be? We're going to pre-build a deck of human technology cards. Everyone starts out somewhat symmetrical, some variation, but we're all starting with human tech. It's going to be a central pool of planets to explore from a deck of both planets and events. These planets belong to alien factions, and you get to them by wormhole, and the wormholes can time out, and you get rid of that planet and replace it with a new planet. You play cards to prepare for going on a space expedition. So that's going to be, we're going to build up towards an expedition to a planet. We're going to visit the planet for a while. When we're done visiting the planet, our resources get shuffled back into our deck, along with whatever new stuff we got from the planet. It's going to kind of have an ebb and flow as you prepare for a space adventure, go on the space adventure, come back. It's kind of be the core loop. We wanted some worker placement, so we can bring people to the planet, and then they can get cards or artifacts or get something from the aliens on the planet. But we have to bring people there to do so. And maybe there could be something where if you're on a planet, the other person can't put a worker on the planet. You know, if it's a small planet, or if it's a big planet with lots of trade, you both can put people on it. So this way there's a little more competition over space. Over space. Anyway, so you gotta have points somehow. So if you get points based on how much you've advanced your technology and how strong your artifacts are, and just in general how much you've obtained from interacting with these aliens, almost how much you've learned and advanced as like a nation or civilization compared to your opponent. And that ties back into our thing of this is an exploration card game. The game ends when we hit a point limit, return limit. There's a supernova card on the deck that says, hey, all the wormholes are going to be destroyed. Where you're at now is most advanced technology you'll ever have. Something like that. Whatever. Not super important right now. So, what's going to be on our deck? What constitutes a deck? What do we need to go to space? Well, we need fuel. So let's have fuel be a resource in the minimum amount of fuel that you need to go to a planet. You got fuel cards. Of supplies, let's see. Supplies can be what you need to like feed the person and repair the ship, and you know, if you need suits that are more durable, stuff that you need to spend money on before you can send humans to a planet. And supply cards. Next we have the people, captains, officers, workers that will send to space. Technology, ships, upgrades, other things. And then we should have action cards because it makes the game more engaging. So let's again. I'm gonna go into this a little bit more in a second. Oh yeah, and last but not least, cards have a primary effect and a discard effect. This way, if you need a bunch of fuel to go to space, but you have a handful of other stuff, you don't just waste your turn. So like, let's say you have extra supply cards. Maybe you could sell them and get some fuel. Or a person can go to space, or they can do a task. You can use a person like an action. Just something to keep the game moving and make sure you can do stuff on your turn. Sorry if I'm talking really fast and going really fast here. I just did a lot of planning. And if this is not making any sense, it's very rambly, totally fine. A lot of this is in my head. I'm just kind of like wanting to brainstorm out loud with y'all, so this way hopefully maybe you'll be like, hey, that sounds cool, or I'm inspired, or I hate this thing that you're doing. Where conversation. This is a monologue that's hopefully a passive dialogue or some shit. I can also just post a link to this slideshow in case anyone wants to see my thought process. Anyway, let's continue. Deck building considerations for making an initial deck. If you have more ships and captains, you can visit more planets at once. If you have more fuel and supplies, you can visit planets more frequently. So we want to try to keep those in balance to kind of avoid any degenerate strategies. So we should limit the initial decks to the same numbers of each deck type. This way, one person with a ton of ships and captains can't just land it on the planets and do a quick rush. Or if someone has tons of fuel, they can just hop from each planet and just strip them down. We want it so that they start out as symmetrical as possible, but with some variation. Check myself. Let's do a review of where we're at. Things that we want: exploring planets, aliens, technology that gets advanced by hanging out with aliens of different types. You hang out with aliens by getting supplies from the planet and sending workers to the planets. Tech trees. We wanted tech trees, but that phrase has not come up again. Let's keep that in mind. What were some of our surprises? And how can we revisit them? So our first surprise was that when exploring planets, it would be a wormhole that's temporary. What can we think about? Oh, that's my next slide. So here's our review of our surprises. So things to think about. Is the random event mechanic that we talked about earlier going to be a fast up deck building? Do you put these random events in your deck? Do you set them up ahead of time? How does that factor into your strategies? So actually, missing slide here. So with exploring planets and exploring via wormhole, it's also, no, I had that later. Never mind. Sorry, a lot going on. Anyway, another question is, heroes get augments, you can't control them. That means that we might need to have alien-specific decks for technology and upgrades, so that you draw from this alien deck and you don't know what you're going to get or what's going to happen. Rather than be like, hello alien, I would like your biggest turbo crystal. You know, alien might give you a turbo crystal, they might be like, yo, this is much better, here is some goo. And, you know, you sniff the goo and suddenly you grow 4 eyes. Whatever. Back to the top. Theme and lore. Top-down design. Getting muddled in the mechanics a little bit. Exploring space via wormholes, countering different alien factions, advancing your own tech. Maybe there's different human companies or factions, but we really want it to be as symmetrical of a start as possible, while still allowing deck building. So a little bit of give, but not that much. We have charismatic leaders who are sending ships to the unknown. Wait a second. I think I just made Mass Effect Trek. Who cares? Still cool. Anyway, let's look at our core turn loop. We've looked at the core gameplay loop already. Let's see what a player's turn might look like. You update the turn counters on all the planets so you can see what wormholes are going to close. So you've updated the state of the wormholes. Thinking about this, what happens when wormholes close if someone's still on the planet? You flip the top card of the planet deck, you get either an event or a planet. New planets get turn counters put on them to say, hey, this wormhole closes in 3 turns. Is there a limit on number of planets in play? Or is it just that they happen to come and go as the wormholes open and close? A player can play or discard any number of cards. They do their turn. Is there a currency for playing cards? Does playing a fuel card have a cost? Or is it just you expend it from your hand? If you can and want to, you can send out a spaceship to a planet to go land on that planet. And you can do the actions on the planets that you're on. So that's our core turn loop. We have some questions about it still, but generally you update the planets, closing some wormholes and adding new planets. You play your hand, you can then set off to space, and then you can do actions on any of the planets that you're currently on. So let's answer those questions I asked. What happens when a wormhole closes on a character? Let's say it triggers a technological failsafe that slingshots them home but gives them whiplash. So instead of going right in your discard where they get reshuffled, they go on the bottom of your deck, face up, so that they don't get to go back in your deck until you've used your whole deck again. Then you shuffle your deck, and then they go in the discard. So getting caught in a wormhole basically makes your heroes take 2 cycles of your deck to go back into your deck, rather than 1 cycle. So basically it takes them out of play for a little while, but doesn't permanently screw you. Let's say limit on planets opening up, there's twice the number of players. Honestly, this is kind of arbitrary. I think this allows for interesting possibilities with keeping planets open or closed, and it keeps space from being too spread out where they're still kind of fighting over territory a little bit, but somewhat arbitrary. And if there isn't room for a new planet, the oldest planet is removed, which closes the wormhole and triggers the first thing. Let's say that we have a resource that's money, and you get money per turn, and you get it by discarding fuel and supplies as well. Let's get some terminology, let's get some theme going. So your in-play area is your hangar, your deck is the factory, and your discard is the warehouse headquarters. So when you play fuel cards and supply cards, you get fuel and supplies in your hangar, and your deck is your factory. You're manufacturing more fuel and more supplies, and equipping your people and outfitting your ships. And then when you're ready to go, you put them in the hangar. Your discard pile is like the warehouse. You've spent this stuff, your people are tired, they need to go back to headquarters. The alien tech goes there before it can be studied and integrated. So discard pile is stuff that's waiting to be reset to be reused. And I think that makes some flavorful sense here. So right now we have 3 resources: money, fuel, and supplies. When you have enough money, you can play cards. And when you have enough fuel and supplies, you can go to space. Yeah, I think that makes sense. It's pretty straightforward so far. Ish. As far as it can be. So answering some more gameplay questions here. Let's say, how are we going to augment our players? We wanted to be able to have augments on characters. So what if every person in your deck has a second copy that goes next to your deck, and whenever you get an augment, you add it to that copy rather than shuffling it in? So let's say you have, Captain Bob, and Captain Bob gets a robot eye. You have Captain Bob in your deck that you can play from your hand, and you have a Captain Bob marker next to you, and that's where you'll put the robot eye attachment. So this way you can have unique heroes that grow over the course of the game. You can have your Captain Kirk get like robot laser eyes, or Captain Picard gets, I don't know, super muscles or something. And that will contribute to the theme of that your deck is upgrading, not just not growing, but just upgrading and changing over time. Next, let's have it so that alien tech has different card backs based on factions. A, this will be easier for game setup and cleanup, but B, it kind of adds that semi-hidden knowledge. Your opponent knows that you've been visiting the red lizards because they've seen you get red lizard cards, and they know that you have some red lizard cards in your hand, but they don't necessarily know what red lizard cards you've acquired that game. They just know, through their spies that you've been talking to those red lizards. So I like the idea of that kind of partial information, and I think it's a unique mechanic to have it obvious what cards in your hand relative to other card games. And let's also say new alien tech goes on the bottom of your discard. So again, you trade with the red lizards and you get a random red lizard card. You know what you got, but it goes in the bottom of your discard, so your opponent won't know what it is until you play it. So there's also that more of the semi-hidden information. So let's say the red lizards are really good at getting fuel and going to space fast. Your opponent might be like, oh, they're planning a super fast blitz rush to a planet, so I have to get my people on these planets soon because I'm going to run out of time. Yeah, I've been talking abstractly a lot. Let's run through a potential turn. So there are 5 planets on the board. It's a 3-player game, and a new planet enters the board. 2 turn counters, so it's only going to be around for 2 turns. It's the planet Hato, and you need 5 fuel to get to Hato. And it's an ice planet. It's not very friendly, so it costs 2 supplies per person when you go to visit it. Double Bite, that's me. I get 5 money per turn, and I have 10 money total. I have 4 fuel, I have a ship card in play, and I have a Captain Rosewater in play. So I'm going to pay 2 megabucks to play a fuel card, get my 5th fuel, and then I'm going to play the rest of my money to play supply cards to get supplies. Again, supply cards get you supply tokens, which then stay in play, and the supply cards go into your discard where they'll get shuffled back in. So this is why we're building our resources in play over time. So I only needed 2 supplies to get Captain Rosewater to space. Why do I have 4 supplies? Because I know that Hato is home to the supply lover aliens. Because Hato had a little supply lover alien marker on the corner of the card. And I know that if I give them 2 supplies, they'll give me a technology card, which will then go in my discard. This is the next turn. Now it's Runner's turn. Runner flips up the next planet card, but it's an event, space-time flux. All the wormholes present close, all the planets go away. Rosewater and his ship are sucked back to me, and they get that whiplash effect. So they don't go in my discard, they go in the bottom of my deck, where they'll be put in the discard pile before the next shuffle. What does Runner want to do? Runner doesn't have any fuel or supply tokens, but he does have a lot of megabucks. He plays a player card called Natasha. Remember how I said players can either go into play or be used for an ability? Well, Natasha is going to be a spy. She lets him take my new technology card from my discard pile. So, even though Runner isn't building up for spaceflight, he's got his own strategy going on that mainly involves screwing me over. I'm now sad. So the reason is I am lazy and I finished this slide at like 12:30 on Wednesday and I still need to start praying for Thanksgiving. So I hope you had a very vivid imagination. Will I make pictures for this? Maybe. I think it's a cool idea. I'd love to do some design on this and see if I can get a prototype going, maybe even put it on Tabletop Simulator or something, because I think we have a lot of really good ideas here. So, wrapping up. We have a space game about exploring planets through wormholes. You build up fuel and supplies, then go visit and people, then go visit a planet. Or you can sell your fuel and supplies to get money, or you can use people's special abilities to mess with your opponent. When you're on planets, you interact with aliens to get their technology, which will then go into your deck and replace other cards and make you stronger over time. So, yeah. That's our game. Space exploration game number 3500. Wormholes in space. So, I know this is rambly even by my standards, but thank you all for watching / listening. I hope this was an interesting way to think of top-down game design, starting from a theme and working through all of the things that you might want in a game of that theme. I've started working on a number of slides for going the opposite way, bottom up, thinking what would be fun mechanics, how can we tie a game back into that? And it's a lot trickier when you're starting. I find this a lot trickier than going top down, so we'll see how that goes. But I've already started working on it, and maybe won't be so lazy and I'll actually like have pictures and stuff. Ooh. Please, I'd love to get some feedback on this, on the level of sense it made. If it does sound like a cool game idea that you want me to continue talking about and exploring. If you have any questions on top-down design or anything. And yeah. I'm enjoying doing this kind of more experimental style of video rather than just having nothing but Let's Plays or watching me type at a computer, for just making video game sprites. I find this kind of thing fun. And I hope you do too. Anyway, until next time, double bite out.